Welcome to the first installment of the Zone of Risk. Two trial lawyers talking two trial lawyers law. Isn't that what it is, Joni Mosely?
That's what it is, and I love it. I'm Mrs. Palsgraf.
Yep. Do you want to explain yourself?
So in law school, there was a case that everyone learned about. Shout out to the law school students, where there's a woman, there's a blast on a train, and there was an issue about whether she was in the zone of risk, whether her injury was foreseeable. And so that's where we've got the name of the podcast, Zone of Risk, and her name was Mrs. Palsgraf.
I believe there was an explosion in that incident, right? Was that not an explosion?
I think there was an explosion on the train,
So
yeah.
you're Mrs. Palsgraf bringing the explosion wherever you go. Is that what it is? Is that why this is the Zone of Risk?
I mean, not like Chipotle explosion, but an explosion.
That's what I've walked into. We're going to have to bleep that out. I don't think they're going to appreciate that. Their food is just fine, probably. Okay. So, Joni, why don't you tell people a little bit about your experience going back to, say, the years of 2003. Let's start from there.
Well, in the year 2003, I had the misfortune of meeting you.
Oh.
I started out as a prosecutor at the Miami State Attorney's Office and tried a lot of cases there. And then I
don't know about that.
Are you kidding me? I was in trial all the time. I was not a trial dodger. How many cases did you try over there?
Not enough.
Right. And I obtained a love of trying cases and of the law, and I've been doing that ever since. I'm on the civil side now. Now I've got my own practice.
We tried a bunch of cases together back in those days, didn't we?
We tried some interesting and very fun cases together. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did.
A couple.
We did. Yeah.
We had a couple.
What have you been doing?
We don't want to go into those war horses now, do we?
Well, maybe we'll talk a little bit about one later because it does tie into a current event.
Uh-oh. Okay. Yeah, well, I've been doing the same. I started, obviously, we started together at the State Attorney's Office in Miami-Dade, 2003. Since then, I've been doing some criminal defense. You've seen me in the hallways of the Gerstein building with my crew.
You've defended some family members.
At times, and for everybody, that's what I do. And personal injury, some wrongful death cases, I've been working on that more. And a lot of business-to-business litigation. So a lot less criminal for me, more civil. But the criminal is always fun. It's certainly, that's where you got the stories.
Nice. We're going to be talking about some criminal cases today, too.
That's where you got the stories, yes.
Yeah.
There's a few there. Well, can we break right into one? Because there's one that's just been all over the news. I don't know if you've been following this Karen Reed trial in Massachusetts. Are you familiar with this one?
A little bit, but not as much as you are, I suspect.
Well, I'm not as familiar with it as some people because there are people who've made an entire profession out of watching this trial, commenting on it in real time. There are a few lawyers who watch the trial and you can tune into their feed on a 30-minute delay. One of the lawyers starts watching 30 minutes. You can start watching 30 minutes in, so she has time to comment.
Nice.
And just run through everything. She pauses and explains what's happening and goes through objections. And
so I can watch her watch the trial.
Basically,
that's riveting. Yeah.
That's a little more in depth than I think we'll do.
Okay.
She's a little deeper in it than me at this point. I'm not like doing the deep dive, like getting to know these witnesses like I know them, but it's pretty wild. There was a lot of she was found not guilty on basically everything.
She got an OUI, right?
Yeah, OUI.
Operating under the influence in Massachusetts.
OUI, operating in the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth put on a 6-week OUI trial, or 8-week maybe. So, but they really had expert witness problems in this case. This was really, really interesting to watch. There was the Commonwealth had a data analyst. It started with this. The first trial obviously was a hung jury. The defense argued very aggressively that the whole thing was staged and that the police framed Karen Reed. That resulted in some jurors thinking she was not guilty and some not, and they had a hung jury. In this trial, their strategy was not exactly as pointed as that. It wasn't they're framing her. It was that their case doesn't prove that there was a motor vehicle injury. Mm-hmm. It doesn't prove that this happened.
They didn't meet the burden.
They argued that, more generically, that they didn't meet the burden.
Yeah.
And they left the jury to draw the inference that obviously, I think what everybody's thinking, the police planted evidence, altered evidence, staged this entire thing. But their problems really started with the expert witnesses, and they had a data analyst who unpacked the black box from Karen Reed's car, and the defense pulled up his CV, and they did a bit of a dive on him, and it turned out that he was lying about his degree.
Really?
On his CV, he claimed he had a degree in mathematics from, I don't know, some university. And
Massasoit Community College?
And turns out the university does not even offer a mathematics degree.
Oh, whoops.
So, and then he said, well, I'm working on it. And they were like, well, it's like you're working on it. So already you have like, you can say, it's just the computer data coming from the black box. What does it matter? But in the end, credibility of witnesses matters.
Sure, it matters.
And this guy's lying about who he is and his degree, and he could be fudging data. So that's the first problem. And then the problems continued when there were accident reconstruction experts. And the Commonwealth's expert tried to reconstruct the accident by like painting some blue paint on his arm and having a Kia back up into, like a Kia Festiva vehicle or something, back up into his arm and try to replicate some damage to the jacket. It doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't sound very scientific.
Yeah.
There
were some weird evidence collection things. So from the outset, I read that there were some problems, right? They were collecting evidence in a red Solo cup and putting it in a Stop and Shop bag. Right?
They were charging $5 to get in, and then that gives you a free evidence bag and Solo cup. For the whole night, they got the
like, why didn't they have like regular police evidence bags? I don't understand why we're doing this. But go on.
It was mostly a keg party, but it was also an investigation.
Yes.
So,
okay.
And mostly because probably this thing happened in a very different way, and some police officers are probably responsible for this death, is I think what everybody's thinking.
Right, and there was a blizzard as well.
There was
a lot
snow.
of snow.
Yeah, it's very confusing. Right. There's snow. There's sort of a Ice Planet Hoth death scene there. They had to cut the tauntaun in half and climb inside for safety. But John, he didn't make it. He didn't get inside the tauntaun. So with the experts, they had the Commonwealth got this guy, this expert for the reconstruction, who did this bizarre paint thing with his arm, and like they literally backed up a car at 5 miles an hour, and he's trying to replicate the tears in this hoodie, in this jacket. And the defense's team, they went and hired the accident reconstruction firm that the FBI had retained when the FBI was investigating the Canton police.
Hold on a second. The defense hired the FBI's expert.
Yes.
Okay, that's a bit strange.
So they hired the pros from Dover. And what the FBI investigation team... Dover. The pros from Dover.
Dover.
So,
can we just tell this entire story in a Boston accent?
We can. We can tell it in a wicked piss away, kid.
Probably shouldn't.
Jay! It's a frame-up Jay. So, it's a whale. So they hired the pros, and they take the exact taillight of the vehicle that Karen Reed was driving, and they buy like 8 of them, and they put it on a hydraulic machine that varies the speed, and they can control the exact speed that it impacts the crash test dummy. And they found at every speed, up to 35 miles an hour, they could not replicate the damage to the taillight that was found.
Well, the damage to the taillight, I remember reading that some witnesses said that there was no damage to the taillight at the scene, and then mysteriously later on, the taillight's busted, and there's glass on the ground. And so there's some conflicting evidence about whether the taillight was actually broken right after the accident. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
So the tow truck driver says there was no damage to the taillight when he's there, and then there's damage later when it's an impound. It kind of reeks of a put-up job, I would say.
Yeah.
And then there was the issue of the damage to this sweatshirt that he's wearing, and they couldn't really replicate this damage. The owner of the house that this happens in front of is also Canton police. While there's a man dead, one of their friends is dead outside, they never come outside the house.
Strange.
They never interact. They never give a report. No investigation is done of inside the house.
And you would think that if somebody's mowed down with a car, somebody would hear that, right?
You might hear it.
Yeah.
You might hear something like that. You know, there was also some weird testing of whether his iPhone would freeze in the same way, the way that they had some temperature gauge things of how the phone was getting cold, and the Commonwealth's experts did some cockamamie putting it in the freezer and testing the different, you know, like stuff that doesn't match with what they had. It's not scientific. It's just like, so I put it in the freezer and then I held it next to my chest and then I checked to see what it did, and it's like, this is what a child would do.
Yeah.
This isn't what a scientist would do. So
but you know what? I sometimes wonder about these grand conspiracies to frame people, because I often wonder whether, you know, there's always going to be some break in the chain, right? These things aren't generally successful, right? And it's generally difficult to get everyone to comply. And so, you know, I am often suspicious about these frame-up allegations.
Right.
But
do you think the purpose of the frame-up is to get a conviction at trial, or for the framers to just not get charged, which they've already succeeded at?
right, maybe the latter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they already won.
Yeah.
That's what I think. But unless the FBI picks it back up.
Right.
But
right.
none of it really lines up. Like the idea of backing a car into a person at 35 miles an hour, and then the damage to that car is only just the tail light, the red part, not even the housing, not even the frame of the car, not even everything else, that hits a person, kills him. You did plenty of cases with accident reconstruction at the state attorney's office, as did I.
And as a plaintiff's lawyer.
Tons of them.
Yeah.
It does. As soon as I started hearing what the evidence was, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Right. And his injuries were also consistent with, a fight and getting bit by a dog? Tell me about that. Where does the dog come into play?
The owners of the house, who were also Boston police officers or Canton police officers that were sort of involved.
So you've got Canton Police, Boston Police, and state troopers.
Right.
Okay.
And Karen Reed. The other part is that Karen Reed was texting. She was the guy that died. She was dating him. That was her boyfriend.
And he's Boston Police.
He's Boston Police.
Okay.
And then she's flirt talking with this text messaging with a ATF agent who's cross-designated and stationed at Canton Police. And they're all maniacs. They're all, according to the testimony, getting wasted drunk, driving all over town, getting into fights with each other, just completely out of control. Like, they just sound like the Wild Bunch, just going completely mental. And it's easy to see how, you know, with all of this love triangle business, a lot of alcohol, a lot of driving all over the place drunk, they're kind of above the law. And it seems like maybe some kind of fight happened and he was killed accidentally, and it was sort of a cover-up. Yeah, but there's been a lot. The defense experts say that the tears through the sweatshirt are exactly like dog bite holes. The Commonwealth was just desperately trying to prove that it happened by him laying in the cold and an icicle fell through it or something. I don't know. You know, they're looking for anything. They were dead in the water. I think the case really fell apart with the experts. That was I mean, it was sort of in trouble already, but when the Commonwealth's experts were in really just messing it up, it was you could see the prosecutor. He has a Massachusetts accent. Have you heard him?
No.
Brennan. He's he would get an objection to something, and the witness wouldn't answer his question, and he go, you don't like that question, do ya? You're like, you don't like that one, huh? Huh? It's like, what's wrong with this guy? It's like Bill Burr on crack. He's in the courtroom, in a suit. You don't like that one, huh? Do ya? Huh? You got a problem with that? Interesting.
But was the mystery ever solved? I mean, they had this whole trial, they had all this evidence, and, you know, the jury found that Karen Reed was not responsible for his death. But if not her, who is? Do we know?
I think we kind of know.
Yeah?
Yeah. I think we kind of know. I mean, who has the power to do all that other stuff? I mean, I'm not trying to go on here and turn tinfoil hat and it's a conspiracy, but it's a thinly veiled one. It's not even a good one. They didn't even do a good job of covering this up.
Well, she was having an affair with some guy, right? With some police officer.
She was
or
dating
sexting.
The one that's dead.
Well, yeah. But there was another guy in the mix?
There was, that was the ATF agent.
I see.
So it's a bunch of, I mean, that's the other thing. It's honestly, you can date whoever you want to. I'm not really judging you, but if you're dating a bunch of cops, I am kind of judging you.
Oh, stop it.
I am judging you. If you're a Badge Bunny, then,
Oh, no.
you're out there. Look what happens. They frame you up for their murder. They throw their dirt on you. You know what Judge Mills Francis used to say? You lay down with dogs, you get fleas.
I thought she'd say, I'm just missing this state.
Yeah.
That's what I remember her saying.
Is there a case here?
Well, we're both from Massachusetts, and I think that's why this case is particularly interesting to us as well.
Yeah.
You're from down the Cape.
Yeah.
Down the Cape.
Hey.
Barnstable.
I heard your judgment.
Well, I'm from, more I guess Cape is mainland still.
You think it's easy down there? Down in Centerville, a nickel costs a dime, Joni Mosely.
Actually, my family lives a town over from where this happened. Randolph. Yeah.
We would just play like Curtis Mayfield music and talk about the hard times down in Centerville and Barnstable Village.
Barnstable. Nice.
Osterville, Katuitt,
Yeah.
Just talk about the hard times and how hard it is to get over. Watch out for the man. You know how it is. But anyway.
All right.
Yeah, it does resonate with me more from Massachusetts. The accents are definitely a plus.
Yeah.
But this one got a lot of people behind it.
It did, actually. It got a lot of national attention.
Especially with the retrial.
Yeah.
Especially with the second, trying it the second time. What do you think's going on with Diddy these days?
Well, oh my gosh. You know what? I'm concerned about that prosecution a little bit. First of all,
Diddy did it?
I don't know if Diddy did it. I don't know. But, I was expecting a lot more. I was expecting other celebrity involvement and involuntary orgies with a whole bunch of other people.
You wanted to see I was
hoping.
Parade of celebrity penises.
To see, yeah, but I didn't get any of that.
No?
I mean, a lot of it is him and Cassie.
Disappointed.
And they're showing a lot of these text messages with Cassie.
It's not good.
And
those are bad for the case.
Those are bad for
Very
the prosecution's case because it kind of makes it seem like she was a bit into it.
Kind of.
Right?
It totally makes it seem like she's into it.
Yeah.
I just saw some ones the other day where she's like, are you going out of town tomorrow? And he's like, yeah, I gotta. And she's like, wait, do you have time for an FO? And he's like, yeah, okay, sure. And she's like, okay, what hotel? So it's not like she's being like drugged and raped into this every single time. She's proposing it as an idea.
Right. And,
out of nowhere.
Part of me feels for her, right? Because she's in a bad situation with Diddy. Diddy's not a good guy. He's not a good boyfriend. He was a jerk.
No.
But
we can agree on that.
We can agree on that.
Diddy, not a good boyfriend. And if he wants to sue us when this is all over for that, that's a judgment. We're allowed to say that, right?
Well, yeah, we can say that. I mean, it's not,
not a good boyfriend.
Not
just
a good
based
boyfriend.
on that video in the hallway.
Yeah, when he's dragging her, and that was
he's dragging her like one of the Flintstone wives across the hallway in the elevator vestibule. That's not good.
That was pretty terrible.
You're out of good boyfriend territory at that point.
But the defense is doing a really good job of dirtying up Cassie as well, and I'm concerned that this case is going to go the way of the insurmountable gunfucking defense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa, what's that?
Oh, you don't remember?
What is that?
You don't remember? Years ago, you and I tried a case. Actually, it was your case. I was your second chair. And it was a fight over money, right? This guy got shot in the leg.
In the leg.
And it was two boyfriends.
Yeah.
And one boyfriend shot the other boyfriend because he wouldn't give him money. And it was a pretty simple attempted murder case. And then when we get to trial, remember we tried the case against... Yes, Cy Gear, and it was. I'm proud to say it was probably one of his last trials, and he was 176 years old during the trial. I mean, he was really.
We miss you, Cy.
But he was wonderful.
Cy was he made it out of the Alamo 2 days before the attack. Cy was like he's been around.
He's been around, everywhere. And he was talented up until the very end. He really
great.
was.
He was
really
great.
Was.
I used to eat breakfast with him all the time.
Oh man,
I used to have coffee with Cy.
I used to wake him up at Arthur hearings.
Yeah,
I'm like Cy, it's your case now. Get up, and he'd pop up, and be brilliant. Every time. But anyway, so our case was a simple case, simple shooting about money. But then the defendant takes the stand, which is so rare.
No case is ever simple.
Well, I suppose. But it's so rare when the defendant testifies in a case. And so that in and of itself was surprising. And then he gets on the stand and he tells this story, right? And he tells the story about some sex and a gun.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you've piqued my interest.
And, well, you were there. And
that's right. I forgot. Yeah. No, this sounds so good. I'm hearing it for the first time. It's so sexy.
He said that he and the victim were inserting the gun into each other.
Was it each other or just one way?
I don't remember, but the gun was used in the sex acts.
We should get a picture of this model of gun for this because it's kind of a squarish.
There was like a 9
I don't
millimeter.
think it would be good for this. There's other guns that would be better for this.
Right. I mean, you wouldn't. I mean, the idea of using a gun at all for that purpose is a bit strange. And the gun was loaded. That's what the defense testimony was, that the gun was loaded.
You could have with that
you would think
intestinal, that would be just not good.
That would be a problem.
It'll clear you out, though.
Right. So
if you've been to Chipotle recently,
claimed,
as you mentioned, that'll clear you out.
He claimed that as they're doing this play with the gun, somebody got so excited that the gun went off, and that's how the victim was shot in the leg. And if you recall during the testimony, nobody could look at each other. Right, we're sitting next to each other at the prosecution table. We can't look at each other. We can't look at anybody out in the audience. We can't look at the judge because the testimony was so outrageous.
The judge was so mad at me for bringing this filth into her courtroom. I don't think she spoke to me for like 2 weeks. She was so mad. She was like, she's like a very virtuous Cuban Catholic woman.
She's a gem.
And I do love her. She married, my wife and I were married by her.
She married us too, my husband and I.
Oh, well,
she's the best.
It's not, I thought it was special for a second, but now I found out you guys
darn
too.
It. Yeah.
But she, but she was, I looked at, she was like turning green.
Yeah.
Like her face was like white and green when this was going on.
I couldn't even look at her. I was so shocked by the testimony, and it was crazy.
I never tried the case in that courtroom again. She sent me down to back up.
She kicked you out.
She sent me down to back up for every trial because she was like, is this going to be another porno gun fucking happening? I don't want this. I don't even want to hear it. I don't want to hear it.
A gun fucking defense is insurmountable.
It is.
So, and also during the testimony, I don't think Cy had heard that before. And so Cy is not asking his client questions. He's allowing him to do a narrative. It's just narrative testimony.
I remember at one point he was like, so after this horrible series of acts that you say, like that, he didn't even know what to say. He was just trying to get it back on track. He was like, everybody. And, there was a public defender who I shall not name, but was in that courtroom at the time.
Oh.
Was assigned to that courtroom. Who was not in the trial. Who was not in the trial, not involved, but was in the gallery. And for years, at happy hours, at investitures, at everything I would go to, I was having to hear about this trial. Everywhere I went from the same, and to the point that I would say to my wife, like, is this guy going to be there? Because it's like, I know he's going to be like, hey, I saw that trial.
But
they fucked with the gun.
But the shame of it is, though, we had a real victim who'd been shot, and what the defense did is they dirtied him up.
Did we have a real victim? Let me also remind you that victim had his own cocaine trafficking case that was open in another courtroom.
Well, but he was still a victim of gun violence.
Well, a victim of the gun violence, but he was also, they were, that part of it made the defendant's story resonate a little bit more. It wasn't exactly just the gun thing. It was like there was a cocaine deal going on.
So did the cocaine charge come in? I don't remember that part.
I think it was going to come in because I had to go talk to your judge at the time.
Okay.
And he was
My judge was a good time.
Yeah. And
a little tough.
Who I still keep up with too.
I like him. Yeah.
Anyway, I have no problem.
I've got Stockholm syndrome.
This was Judge. I have no problem saying this was Judge.
Okay. I thought it was a different judge.
No, it was the case. Had closed out the other. Sorry to name drop, but had closed out the other cocaine trafficking in front of Judge. And it was like a withhold SES on like a 3-year min-man. So Cy was going to make an issue of it. And I had to go talk to Judge. I was maybe going to have to call him. And he was like, okay, fine. You want to call me as a witness? Here's what I'm going to say. The state was incompetent to prove their case. And I was like, no problem. I'll see you at 3 o'clock.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that's rough.
I don't think you were there for that conversation, but it was a good one. Yeah.
So that evidence came in, right? And then we've got this whole story about this gun fucking, and it dirtied our victim to the point where the jury's just so disgusted, like, ugh, I don't care about either one of these people. Right. I just want this trial over.
Right.
Not guilty.
Why should we care about what one turd did to another turd in the toilet? That's what they're shooting for. And that's what this is like. That it is. It's to be like, this is their business and it's gross.
Right.
So,
and I'm thinking, my concern is that's what's happening in the Diddy case. They're bringing in all this evidence about Cassie being sort of a willing participant in this disgusting business. And, you know, that is a good breeding ground for a not guilty.
Look, I think that the evidence that she's a willing participant is legitimately there. I mean, those texts are very troublesome.
Yeah.
For her to come in and say, I was a victim, and every time this thing happened, it was against my will, and I was raped, and there's the Stockholm syndrome argument, but this is not exactly Stockholm syndrome when you're saying, let's do it again.
Well, there's a power dynamic, though. Right?
Maybe.
I mean, he held her career in his hands, and I think it's hard to leave something.
We can have days worth of testimony.
A lot of
about what that guy held
baby
in his
oil
hands.
and a lot of things. But I think that, you know, it is sometimes hard to leave situations where, you know, you don't have any power. And you're scared. You're scared for maybe your physical safety, but also your career, right? This was her world, and she didn't want to be taken out of it.
Right.
Right. Taken out of the fame, taken out of the the glamorous life.
But isn't that
on some level?
Isn't that sort of just making a choice, thow? I mean, you shouldn't have to make that choice.
Maybe.
But,
yeah.
I mean, if she's choosing to be in his orbit, and I don't know. I mean, she could go with somebody else and have a record career, maybe. But I don't know. It's troublesome to their case. I think their case is falling apart.
Yeah.
I think what's going to happen is Diddy's going to save the $10 million that he was going to have to pay Trump for the pardon, and that's the end of it. I mean, I think he was going to need to do that. Now he doesn't. He's going to his lawyers are just going to maybe win it for him. Yeah. Which is surprising because, I mean, he had enough baby oil to, like, wax Shamu.
Right.
But, like, now he's going to be found not guilty.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's sad that the baby oil is the most sort of titillating part of this.
Oh, it is.
In a lot of ways. So
it titillates.
It
does. Titillates.
Yes. So let's talk about what else you've been up to. Let me tell you what I've been up to.
Tell me.
I just got some billboards.
Has anyone drawn a dick on your billboards yet?
No, but you know what? People ask me with the billboards, like, "Oh, are you concerned? Like, you know, are you concerned that they're going to be successful?
About
are you
a
concerned
dick on the billboards?"
But I'm most concerned that somebody's going to draw a dick in my mouth.
Giant.
That is they're going to climb up the pole and draw a.
Well, now
I'm not inviting that.
Now that you told me about the billboards,
please don't.
Your concern level should be escalated.
Please don't.
Except for the fact that I'm afraid of heights, so I'm not going there. So your stuff is safe.
I've got a stationary one, and then I've got digital ones. Digital ones, you really can't draw a dick in somebody's mouth because it changes all the time.
They'd have to get in there and replace that file with another picture. Someone that knows how to do that and knows what your passwords might be for the billboard company. I'm going to bribe your husband. No, but I saw you sent me a picture of the billboard. It looks great. I saw that. The static one looks great. You're like coming out of the billboard.
Yeah, it's called an extender.
That's badass.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you.
It's very nice.
Yeah.
I have a couple of cases that I just settled. One was some employment-based, and I've got an interesting new case where my client was beaten by a sheriff's deputy in the jail in like Hamilton County or something like that. Like one of these counties that's somewhere up there. Somewhere up there. Up there.
Yeah, everything is up there from where we are.
Yeah, I don't know where these things... Like, I don't even know anything about Flagler Street, honestly. It's all a blur above, like... Ives Dairy Road is like my line, my cutoff. Yeah, so I'm mostly civil, so I've been doing some personal injury. I've got a little bit of criminal that's like lingering and dangling around. That's a lot of fun. I actually have one more case that I think we should talk about.
All right.
That was one of our newsworthy cases that I thought of. I thought of this like kind of on the way over here. I thought of it like right before I left, and I thought it would be an interesting one. This is a guitar pedal. Guitar players use these things, and it makes the sound like that, like, you know, like chugga chugga sound versus like what it would just sound like clean. In 1995, this man named Bill Finnegan created a pedal pretty much like this one.
Were you alive then?
Yes, unfortunately. He called it the Klon Centaur, and it had a little logo with like the centaur guy, where it's like the archer, where he's got a horse leg section, and then shooting an arrow, bow and arrow. And it was gold, and it had knobs like this. Mm-hmm. and it was called the Klon Centaur. This guy was in Boston. He was making these things like in his attic or something, and he couldn't keep up with the demand, and it got very popular, and he kind of went out of business. He didn't know how to deal with popularity really.
I can relate, yeah.
Yeah, so these things, so the real ones of these, the ones that he made in the 90s and 2000, or mid to late 90s, now sell for about $5,000 to $6,000.
Wow, is that one of them?
No. So this is a clone. So actually, it's a clone.
Okay.
So anyway, so he had his business. It kind of went out, and then he started selling them again, like through some weird name on like eBay. But he wasn't really kind of doing business. And other manufacturers started making clones because this got very popular from some players like John Mayer. A few other players are using these pedals. And it just became one of these things where like there's just so few of them. Like I was making them by hand. It became basically unobtainium. This is from a company called Ryra. A lot of different companies make a similar product now.
Okay.
The same knobs, the same color, the same kind of logo, and basically the same circuit inside. This Bill Finnegan he's in business again, I guess. There's this company called Behringer that makes everything. They make keyboards, they make guitar amps, they make everything music, all kinds of things. So Klon's been letting it go. Finnegan's been letting it go that a lot of duplicates are out there with different companies. But Behringer is actually huge. Mm-hmm. So they just sued, Klon LLC, just sued the parent company of Behringer called Music Tribe, I believe, and over their infringement on their, basically on the design. They're not suing them over what's inside. What's inside this circuit is going to be exactly the same.
Okay.
And everybody can do the same circuit. You can't copyright that. You can't trademark that.
Yeah.
It's just a circuit of different transformers and potentiometers or whatever, but they've cloned the design, and Behringer actually went even closer than this with like the exact Archer logo that Bill Finnegan used, the exact design, the exact color, and they even put on it the name Centaur, which is what he called it. Okay. You notice they don't call this Centaur, they say Ryra, that's the name company.
But they have a Centaur.
They have a guy,
yeah.
But they're not. So Behringer went a step further and actually put the word Centaur on theirs. And then when they advertised it, I saw the marketing video for their version of it, the Behringer Centaur. They actually have a picture of Bill Finnegan. They talk about the legacy and history of the original Klon Centaur as if it's this pedal's legacy.
Yikes.
And they say, this pedal was used by John Mayer. This pedal was used by blah, 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 blah. This was designed by Bill Finnegan. So I think at that point they said, enough's enough. So this is one to watch from the guitar world.
Interesting. And you're in the guitar world a little bit.
I'm in the guitar as a consumer, but you know.
Right, but you're a musician.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you play?
Bass and guitar. I play mostly. Let me buy some more of these little things, and it makes you play better, hopefully, but it doesn't, you know.
Very cool.
That's the dream.
All right, well, thank you for entering the zone of risk. We'll see you next time.
You have inadvertently entered the zone of risk. You're on notice. Govern yourself accordingly.
Your injuries are foreseeable. You have entered the zone of risk.